Hello, am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Vasuliti, you are audible.
Okay. Good evening and welcome you all to today's webinar organized by the Department of Food and Nutrition in collaboration with Health Unit and IQAC of HMM College for Women on Omicron, the new threat. The world today has witnessed an emergency situation due to increasing widespread of a severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or in short SARS-CoV-2, since December 2019. The virus has proved to be much more fatal than the influenza pandemic in 1918 that resulted in more than 50 million deaths. The capital of Hubei province in central China, Yuan, came to be known as the center of an outburst of peculiar incurable problem of pneumonia, the cause to which could not be understood by the doctors. However, the scientists in the early January 2020 isolated a novel coronavirus, namely severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or as we say in short, SARS-CoV-2, from samples of the patients suffering with such pneumonia. This virus was later labeled as coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 in February 2020 by World Health Organization. Till date, the virus has infected at least 204 countries as well as territories throughout the world and has caused a large number of deaths worldwide. The World Health Organization has declared the emergency situation due to COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern. Today, we are going to know a lot about this virus, especially the Omicron strain, which is posing a serious threat to our health, from our distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Ashim Kumar Dottoray, scientist of the Department of Medicine of Oslo University, Norway. But before that, I would like to invite our Honorable Principal Madam, Dr. Shoma Ghosh, whose continuous support and encouragement enabled us to organize the webinar. I would now request Madam to inaugurate today's event. Madam, please.
Thank you, Harshati. It's really a privilege to have with us Dr. Ashim Dottoray, medicine scientist, professor, Faculty of Medicine, University of Oslo, Norway, who is as well the editor-in-chief, Food and Nutrition Research. This particular webinar has been organized by the Food and Nutrition Department, which also runs a health unit for the students of the college. And IQAC has always been a great support in all such events. So I'm really thankful to Dr. Ashim Kumar Dottoray, who has made himself available for us despite his very busy schedule. And I'm really thankful to the Department of Food and Nutrition and IQAC for organizing such a relevant webinar for us. Actually, most of us are the worst sufferers, and this particular trend, Omicron, has not spared us. We are all being targeted by this particular strain. And due to this Facebook University, we are just burdened with so many information of and many of these information are not relevant and misleading. So at this moment, this is a very pertinent thinking or thought of Shoma, Bhashwati and others to organize such a webinar to listen to the details of it, its cause, consequence, and how should we live and how should we handle our diet, everything from just from horse's mouth. Dr. Roshin Kumar Dr. Roy, and everyone is waiting eagerly to listen to him. So I'd rather, with lots of gratitude, request Professor Dr. Roy to enlighten us and oblige us by giving proper information. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Dr. Soma Ghosh, the principal of. Can you hear me first thing?
Yes, you are absolutely audible.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good evening from Oslo. And I'm really grateful to the principal of Real Mozambique College for Women, Dr. Soma Ghosh, and also initially connecting this with me, Dr. Shoma Shaha. And I'm really very happy to be here today and to share with you on the latest of the Omicron and how much is hype and how much is truth is there and how important it is to understand the Omicron. Omicron itself is a kind of enigma still today, and we really don't know its father, mother, or grandfather. There are a lot of stories coming out of it. It seems like it could be quite a deviant from the existing COVID-19 causing viruses, but also it is not yet anything clear-cut that we can tell at the moment. But what I will try to do today is to go with the basic things about when the viral infection happens to our body and what happens, the reactions, and then I'll talk about what we know about it so much with Omicron as we go through it, and then I will discuss being a nutritionist, what we should do. The most important thing, of course, is to keep ourselves fit so that we can ward off any invasion, any viruses, including this one, today and in future. So with this, I will just share the screen and start my lecture. Okay, just a minute. Can you see my? Can you? Can you see it?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, I'll just make it slideshow. All right, can you see the slide now? Is okay? Hello? Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
We can hear you.
all right. Okay, I'm sitting here at the Riks Hospital, which is a national hospital, and it is the free for everybody in here. In Norway, medicine is completely free for any kind of treatment, and whether it's a kind of a preventive or curative, whatever it is all free. So that the government is making sure that everyone's health is in good shape. And of course, health means not just the health itself. It means we have to have a proper nutrition, understanding of the physiology, and understanding of the threat that we are facing today. So it's very important that people are knowledgeable so that we don't do the mistakes. And so the national health is in right shape. And government does not need to spend too much money unnecessarily. So the knowledge in medicine is the most important. As you know, the medicine knowledge is changing every day almost. So the practicing doctor is not good enough to lead the medicine unless they are quite well aware of what is going on and the mechanistic behind it. And with this, I will start the talk. As you see, this is I got it from the World Meter of COVID infection. As you see that in India, there are 3 waves. With some first wave was a little bit staggered, and second wave peak was very, very high peak. And then we are having the third wave, it seems like. and it is positive agent is mixed. It could be Delta virus as well as Omicron, and depends on the symptoms, and of course ultimately the final sequencing of the genome will determine whether it is Omicron or Delta or things like that. And the peak depends on so many factors: so vaccination, knowledge, hygiene, nutrition, etc., including the way we behave. That is maintaining the distance among ourselves. So many things actually contributing to this pandemic, and so the nature of the peak and the wave. So that's why it's very difficult to compare one country's peak and wave to the other country, and especially in India itself, the different state has a different way of making this pandemic wave. But whatever it is, it seems like that the virus continues to evolve, and resulting seems like more transmissible variants. And there are population in India, there are the unequal vaccine distribution and access to life-saving tools, proper nutrition, and these are the contributing factors. And of course, social mobility is politically most of the time is regulated, and that also create a lot of problems, and plus also religious kind of celebration also contributing to this. So there are things like that, and that lead to a lot of misinformation, disinformation, conflicting messages, and also politicization of the events of this thing that happens very much so in third world countries. So today I would like to give you the clear view, as much as I know within my best of my knowledge, what is Omicron and what we should do. As you see here, that COVID-19 variants tracked by WHO has different variants. It started with alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Delta is discovered in India. I will be mostly concentrating on India. And then we have a Omicron, and it is detected in several countries, as reported in November 26th, and there are more variants are coming. So the question is why it is happening so, and if it is happening, then what are the impacts of it, and what is the future we have it, and if it is too much changes going on, then what is the worth of vaccine? That thing I will be discussing with you, and the implication of whole thing in here. Now you see the timeline variant of Omicron variant. It is considered B11529, but it has been today it has been challenged by somebody saying is it quite a deviant from COVID variant. So, but we don't know at the moment, but it seems like that it is the Omicron that I'll tell later on. If you see the top part of the slides, the change is happening mostly in the outer protein, the spike protein, that the virus that uses the spike protein to enter into the body. And it seems like if it is changing extensively, then the antibody against this spike protein doesn't work. And of course, that leads to the most transmission and infectious situation that we are in today. And how it happens, if you see there's a top thing that is virus A, and it mutates, because the main purpose of the virus is to replicate. That's all. Just nature that we are here, just replicate. And during replicate, they do mistakes sometimes, because RNA viruses are not that smart, so they have a mistake, and they create the mistake, and that is the problem. And then it mutates over time, and that changes the surface. And the surface is very important, because against the surface we produce the vaccine, and this surface is like a shard, adhere. And if they change the shard, then the antibody cannot detect it, and that is the problem. And it seems like this spike protein, that is the antibody was produced before, whether mRNA vaccines or the total vaccine with the attenuated vaccine, they could recognize to some extent, but not 100%. So that's the problem, is the mutation is going on, and mutation happens if they find the body, the host. So if the vaccination is not 100%, if the vaccination is not very complete, then of course they will propagate and survive in the body, and they produce different mutants at different times, depending on the environment, other situation, and the human body itself, and they will have a different kind of variant that you see in different countries. But then ultimately they move around through the human body or other, and then we see that that is a whole world is infected with certain dominant variant. So why it is? Because mutations are the building blocks of the most of the evolution that we know of, and mutation is a part of being a virus. Virus mutate to adapt to their surroundings and more effectively move from host to host. That happens. And mutation can cause virus to better evade our immune system. That is the most important thing that I'll talk later on. When virus invade us, what sort of the immune response that we have it in order to stop this invasion. So the most important part, if the virus survive in our body, that means they evaded the immune system. So that's why we need to understand that how we can make our immune system better, and whether through vaccination or by naturally through diet, nutrition, and exercise, so that our immune system is much more potent in order to destroy these viruses. And it is also important that a mutation is a random thing. It can also destroy the virus itself and die down. But important thing is that which are surviving in our body, they are there because they invaded us, and also they actually evaded the immune system that we have in ourselves. So the people in a country where the low vaccination rates, where is a compromised immunity because of malnutrition, protein nutrition, fat or carbohydrate or vitamins, and they give the opportunity to enhance the infect to other people much quicker, that we see in India. So if you look at the Omicron virus, as you see, this virus is a spike, has a lot of spike protein, S protein we call it, and most of the mutation that we know in Omicron, that has 32 mutation in the spike protein. So it's almost making a new kind of spike protein, and the antibody or vaccine we have it in our system, it against the S protein, the spike protein, which cannot anymore recognize this mutant. That is the problem. The spike protein actually helps the virus to enter the human cells, but this is not inevitable by the vaccine we have or by natural immunity that we have against the original COVID virus. So that is the main problem. Another thing is there are 10 mutation on the receptor binding domain, which I'll tell later on. That's why it is a little bit different than the other COVID variant. Now, if I go further on this Omicron, the Omicron is more transmissible than any virus we know of so far, and it is not clear whether it causes more or less severe disease. This slide is a bit old, so but we know that it almost doesn't do much of the severe symptoms, but there are some long COVID effect that I'll talk about, especially with the young people, and what should we do in terms of nutrition and to make sure that the long COVID effect does not affect our children or young population. And there is a reinfection is possible. Data is limited, and of course, unless you have a full genome sequence, it is very difficult to know this infection is due to Omicron or other variant. And clinical management, it is, I will talk a little bit later, it is not needed as such, unless the people has some other severe situation. Most of the time, we don't have the drug also, to be honest, against this COVID virus. Whatever it is a repurposed drug, and it has a lot of side effects. So it is still a question mark in terms of clinical management. And evidence show that the most of the thing that we are seeing it in Europe and America and others, this severity is due to probably due to Delta infection, not because of Omicron infection. So what is driving that? driving transmission is a population level of immunity that I will talk later on, that how we can really stimulate their immune competence. And also, it also depends on the characteristics of the variants. If the variant changes the spike protein, the way, the mechanism, the way they enter the body, if it is changing, that our existing antibodies may not work. And of course, the population mobility and social mixing, that is sometimes is on, sometimes is off. And this is a major problem when it comes to the Omicron transmission. The symptom I should mention here, the symptom generally start with body ache. I'm talking about the Omicron, not the Delta version of it. Generalized weakness is a very important issue. Fatigue, headache is very important, and sometimes fever initial days, and eventually develops a cough, which is mostly dry cough actually, and they reside mostly in the nose and the throat, but it doesn't go to the lungs. That I'll talk later why it is, and it is good for us in a way. And most of the time, 80% of the patient fever is resolving first 3 days, and then becomes a sign of moderate to severe, in which needs close monitoring. But during this phase, is paracetamol or ibuprofen is more than enough in order to give some kind of respite from the body ache and the fever and headache. No other medicine is required. As you see, this slide is a Delta variant, not with Omicron. It started with kind of a cough and fever, etc. And then ultimately go, because it affects the lung capacity. So the oxygen saturation is affected, and sign of pneumonia and severe respiratory distress syndrome. And ultimately, life-sustaining treatment required, because there is a cytokine storm that I will also discuss later on, that involved with non-Omicron COVID virus, mostly Delta and others, but not with COVID as far as I know. And then there is a kind of the multiple organ failure, and ultimately the death happens. But luckily, the situation, if you see in this red circle, it is not a feature with the Omicron yet. Now, question is why? It is good, of course. Omicron, it does not go to invade the lungs. It go up to bronchi probably, and it mostly reside in the nasal and other situation. Because if you look at left side, the Delta variant of COVID or all other COVID variant we know of, they require, of course, also Omicron require ACE2 as a receptor that the spike protein binds and goes inside the cell. And if you look at the same lungs, the lung has a lot of transmembranal protease situation, serine protease, that actually helps to COVID virus to go into the lungs. And but where in the lungs, most of the contain TMM, PRSS2, but which is not required for, which is actually inhibitory for this Omicron virus to enter into the lung. So it is shown in vitro cell culture study with a cell that expresses a lot of TM, PRSS2, and ACE2, and it shows that Omicron doesn't go there. And Omicron only use ACE2, and this go inside the cell, and through a very slow mechanism, they release the virus RNA. Whereas the other Delta virus others, they, with the help of TMPRSS2, they actually release directly the RNA inside the cell, and then virus RNA, they take over the protein synthesizing machineries, and then they produce their own so many variants, so many viruses, and then release to embed to the other cells, and that goes on. But with Omicron, because of this situation, it doesn't go into the lung. So far we know of, as of today, the lung infection by the Omicron is almost nothing there. Maybe a little bit there, but is less because of this mechanistic situation, but it's good for us. So about the drug, we know that we have been only there in India, the molnupiravir and Paxlovid are approved, but this Paxlovid is not available in the first week. It is for sure, if somebody is hospitalized, then there is no drug available to give it to them. So it's better to stay home and get paracetamol or ibuprofen and try to get yourself. So the hospitalization is almost unnecessary unless there is a other comorbidity or other problems. Some people has it. Otherwise, in an Omicron infection, it is not needed. And another important problem that we see very often, the use of antibiotic, that is very common in this situation. And it is shown that 90% of the hospitalized COVID patients in America were given an antimicrobial with only 7% required to treat the secondary infection. Because as you know, antibiotic has nothing to do with virus, but it has this opportunistic infection by bacteria. That's why the antibiotic is given, but it is showing that it is not very good, because there's a surge of drug-resistant infection due to the misuse of antimicrobial during the pandemic. So one has to be very careful not to use antibiotic as such. So if you look at this slide again, this is the showing the SARS-CoV virus with S protein, and then how they are, with the help of TMPRSS2 and ACE2 receptor, they bind, and then they are going inside. The genetic material is sent here, and then it goes for anything like that. But with Omicron, it is different. It goes the whole virus, and then it doesn't need the help of TMPRSS2, and it is very slow, especially in the lungs, where this TMPRSS2 is very important for enter into the cell. That's so it doesn't go very much in the or very little in the lungs. And there are certain drug is available which have been used for different kind of viruses, and showing they can impact the inhibition TMPRSS2 and things like that. But the drugs are used for different kind of viruses, but it has been used, as you know very well, last 2 years for different situation with a limited permission, but most of the time doesn't work, or the patient has a lot of side effect. Now, what is natural immune response? When any virus, they enter into our system, into the cell, for example, say here is endothelium or lung cell, whatever it is, the virus once goes inside the cell through ACE2 or other it is, then interferon is produced by the infected cells. And this interferon then is send the signal to other the neighboring cells that that cell is infected by the virus. And this interferon then do so many things. One is that interferon produces antiviral protein so that it can inhibit the virus to invade the other cells, and also it also enhances the production of major histocompatibility complex 1. And you know that all the cells except red blood cell, they produce major histocompatibility complex 1, and this is very important. And every cell has this on the receptor, on the membrane, and they have a self-antigen, so that the patrolling police, the innate immunity involving that natural killer cell, macrophages, and dendritic cells, they come and look for MHC1, and if it is a cell protein, they don't do anything, they go away. But if the viral protein or any pathogen sits there, that MHC1, then they will be killed by natural killer cell or cytotoxic cell, and they will remove the infected cell. So the producing the virus goes into the cell, and then viral infection, viral degraded pathogenic protein part, it goes to the MHC1 and then expresses on the cell. That means the infected cell is looking for suicide, wants to be killed by the patrolling immune system we have, that is natural killer cell or cytotoxic T cells or dendritic cell, even macrophages. They would like to be killed. And if they are not killed, then it will go to the second stage, adaptive immunity, which I'll come later on. But this is happening right away. And in that one, when this interferon is produced, and then it goes to the different cells, and then produce cytokine, etc. Then you have fever, other problems also come, but it's a response to the viral infection. But the most important thing is interferon production by the cell that gives us the indication that the cells, some of the cells are infected for the virus. It needs to be killed by mechanism that we have it by toxic T cells or natural killer cells or dendritic cell, and so they remove the invading virus from the system. And in doing that, the interferon does so many things, as I wrote in the right side, you can see. And for your further study, you can consult different publication. So if I summarize these things that happen, whether it is a vaccine antigens or any pathogen, as you see, it has been taken by antigen-presenting cells. That antigen-presenting cells are macrophages, dendritic cells, and also sometimes is monocyte macrophages. And then they will process the virus, and then they will take little portion of the virus and put into the MHC1 type 1, as you see here. And this MHC type 1, it sees the viral particle there. Then the CD8 T cell, cytotoxic cell will come and kill and get the information from there. So whenever it sees this one to any other cell, it will kill those cells. So any viral infected cell will be killed by CD8 plus cytotoxic T cells. And other thing happened, that antigen presenting cells may have a type to have a MHC type 2 cells, and then they will stimulate CD cells, helper cell, and they will produce B cells, and the B cell will produce the antibody against the virus. So as you see here, one is the cytotoxic T cells, other is the type 2 MHC type 2 cells, which is involved in the antibody production. So any pathogen that in order to get killed or inhibited, it has to have a both innate immune system as well as that adaptive immune system, so that the B cell got all the information for the next infection, so it can produce the antibody and kill the virus. So vaccine does the same thing, but it does not have a inflammatory behavior or virulence. The vaccine, whether they use the total virus with the attenuated virus or dead virus, so that they got the information, and B cell get all the information, so they produce the antibody against the virus. And if it is a pathogen, we call herd immunity or natural immunity, this pathogen will do the same thing, and some of the B cell will have the information against the pathogen. So in future, if the pathogen attack, then this B cell will produce the antibody and kill the pathogen. The important thing, the nutrition is very important role it plays in order to have the complete both innate system and adaptive system. Because if the nutrition is not properly there, then whether you get a vaccine, it will not have a proper or highly stimulated B cell, memory cell or B cell that producing the antibody. It needs energy, it needs fatty acid, it needs some minerals, etc., in order to produce the antibody. So I would like to tell you here that both for pathogen, in order to invoke the immune response, both innate and adaptive, or vaccine, it is given to our body, then it needs a B cell, memory B cell, so it can produce the antibody against the vaccine that contain the antigen. It all needs nutrition. And as you see here, that again the same thing, but I'll not talk about it here, because as you see, the initial reaction when the innate system is working, then you have all sorts of problem depending on the virus, whether it's a cold virus, COV2 virus, or Omicron. That is happening because of the innate system is working instantaneously. And then we have an adaptive system. It takes a little bit time. That's why we have to wait when you get the vaccination, a few weeks or months, so that you have a full memory B cells and antibody production, so that you are quite protective against the pathogen. And as you see here, that when the virus entered into the cell, the blue color is the cells. I'll not go details into that. This virus, the main purpose of nature is a reproduction. So any virus is interested of reproducing itself as much copy as possible. using our protein synthesizing machineries in the cells. So there are several pathway and steps, and there are a lot of studies done with other viruses. We know that what sort of molecules or drugs inhibiting what sort of steps from maturation to release into the system again. As you see here, there are different drugs available for different viruses. For COVID and Omicron, the data is not there because still study going on, but we are repurposing the other drug used for other virus in order to stop this viral replication in the body when it is a really serious situation like cytokine storms or high inflammatory conditions, or in a condition like multi-organ failure. Now, coming back to Indian situation, as you see here, that the daily COVID cases is increasing. And increasing, there are stories, there are data that the Omicron may be now become a community spreader than Delta. It is taking over, or still both are going on, Delta, COVID, and maybe other viruses, we don't know. Because unless you do the genomic sequence, there is no way to know that what variant of COVID is there. So where the first COVID variant is detected, that doesn't mean that country has a first mutant there. It is because they have the method to detect any changes in the genome. So that is one of the reasons why different third world countries still don't know what sort of variants are making havoc there. But it is because of the technology there. But initial symptom may be same, but only difference now we know of Omicron and previous COVID version Delta, that the lung situation. So, and also in the recent data showing that it is very alarming that there are some genes actually could be make people more vulnerable to the COVID situation, and this gene is present in around 14% in the Polish population, 8 to 9% in the rest of the Europe, and 27% in India. So you have to think about the some of the rationale to explain the wave 2 and 3 that we are vulnerable to this situation, and the importance of the genetic factors are there. So it is possible that a version of the gene with the double the risk of the lung failure is also could be there. The study is still going on. With immigrants in different countries, and they're suffering a lot of the COVID, and then looking at how we are interacting with this invasion. But the most important is the good health that I'll be talking a little bit later, because if you look at this slide, SARS, when it enters into the body, of course, it is a foreign particles, and then it activates the immune system, both innate and acute and adaptive immune system. And this initially, a lot of cytokines are involved in order to kill this virus. And then if it goes too much, and the adaptive system is still not in the place because it takes time, then this cytokines, a battery of cytokines, this is impacting whole of the organ, our body system. And that is the problem. And this is a blood coagulation, microcirculation disorder, systemic inflammation, because cytokines are small proteins, but most of them are pro-inflammatory, some are anti-inflammatory, like interleukin 10, but interleukin 6 is the most damaging one. And then it affects from kidney to heart, everything. And then ultimately the brain also is affected, and multiple problems. So if we really can handle the initial stages of the infection through the proper immune competence, then probably we may not need to go to the riot situation where a lot of cytokines are produced and creating this problem. And this is very much true with the Delta variant, not much we know of with the Omicron variants. Another thing is we must know the existing condition, obesity, along with diabetes mellitus, is a predisposing factor for the development and the outcome of COVID-19, including Omicron. And conversely, the infection with SARS can induce diabetes mellitus and potentially also obesity in the long term. It has been now reported in the young people, those are infected with asymptomatically or less severe, they are probably having a kind of diabetic-like syndromes, as well as some problems in brain function also. So this bidirectional relationship between obesity, diabetes, and sedentary lifestyle, probably with SARS-CoV infection, may partially explain the long COVID problem syndrome. It is related to comorbidities such as cognitive dysfunction, cardiopulmonary in old people, but with young people, it shows that there are some problems. And this is the problem. The SARS, the virus, they actually lowered the adiponectin. The adipose tissue is no longer a storage for fat. It is a metabolic organ. It produces so many hormones that tune the body from resistin, leptin, adiponectin, etc. And it is very important, controlled by dietary fat, sedentary lifestyle, including by the gut bacteria, and some of the polyphenols that is present in the fibers, also in the fibers. They actually better tune this adipose tissue. That I'll come later on. And this adipose tissue, it shows that if the virus is infected the body, that it decreases the adiponectin and leptin, but increase the interferon pathway and increase the innate immunity response, and that lead to hyperglycemia. Any infection actually leads to hyperglycemia, but with SARS-CoV-2, it is much more, and produce insulin resistance and beta cell failure. So it is very important, those who are adipose, high obesity people or obese people, they might develop extra problems because of this infection. So what is long-term effects of coronavirus? It is very important, and the latest study shows that 10 to 30% of the 40,000 adults who tested positive for the corona last week could develop the so-called long COVID. And long COVID symptoms are extreme tiredness, shortness of breath, time to time it will come, chest pain, a headache, memory and concentration, brain fog we call it, difficulty in sleeping or intermittent sleeps, heart palpitation, dizziness, and these are the symptoms that still persist even after recovery of COVID. And sometimes high temperature, sore throats, it could come, and rashes, and loss of taste is quite common also under this condition. But this is a very important observation published in Nature. It shows that infant brain during pandemic scored lower on average on test of gross motor, fine motor, and communication skill. And this is also true whether the father, their birth parents had been infected or not with virus. It is there. So environment also has some impact on the children. It seems like they're scoring much less than they should be when it comes to the acute what I call it, the intelligence quotient, etc., and the learning aptitude. It seems like it is dropping seriously. Now, of course, we have an immune system, the innate immune system. I didn't go details into that, but you have some idea that the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system, how they come together. Of course, adaptive immune takes a little bit time in order to make sure that the B cells got the memory of the pathogen so that they can produce the antibodies. But as you see, all these things depends on the nutrition that we need to have every day. And as you see here, we are taking food and a lot of drinks and essential nutrients that is very important for immune function. And of course, we have bacteria around 2 kilos in the gut. They are much more involved in the immune function and brain function. And many organs we have to have a lot of water, and of course, thousands of lipids and water soluble metabolite that makes us a human being. But still we are hybrid because we have more non-mammalian cells in our body than ourselves. So we make sure that we get every day 20 grams or more dietary fibers to feed these bacteria so they can produce short chain fatty acid and other signaling molecules so that they can tune the body and make us the immunologically more competitive. And if you look at this side, the vitamin C and vitamin E and selenium are very important for natural killer cell and T cell defense. That is very important for your innate immunity. And zinc also help for the innate immunity. So these nutrients or vitamins are very important. And of course, the omega-3 fatty acid is also very important. But unfortunately, omega-3 intake in India is as low as possible, as far as I know. And omega-3, the ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 is changed a lot last 50 years, because in order to reduce the cholesterol, we increase the omega-6 fatty acid, seed-based oil, that is peanut oil, sunflower oil, etc., etc. And in order to do that, we push omega-3 fatty acid much low level. And it is almost an alarming situation. And we now know that omega-3 can dampen down the inflammatory cytokines. So it is very important that we increase the omega-3 intake in terms of cod liver oil, or mustard oil has some omega-3 fatty acid, and spinach and urad dal, they contain some omega-3 fatty acid. And omega-3 fatty acid not only increase the anti-inflammatory interleukin-10, that is very important in a cytokine storm. It also reduces the interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, interleukin-1 beta. These highly pro-inflammatory cytokines involved in cytokine storms, and that damaging our body system. And also it stopped the replication of the virus. I'm not going to the mechanistic behind it, but there are a lot of studies showing that icosapentaenoic acid and DHA can actually inhibit the viral replication, as does the zinc. So these 4 nutrients I talk in this slide, 5 actually, if they are taken in proper ways, then you can balance the immune response during COVID situation, by down-regulating the pro-inflammatory cytokines and up-regulating the anti-inflammatory cytokines, and stopping the viral replication in the cells, and enhancing the patrolling efficiency of our immune system, that is by increasing natural killer cell activity, T cell activity, the defense of our body. And another is gut microbiome, that is very important. Recently, a review has been written on that how the gut microbe, by changing it, can really protect from the COVID infections. And that is for sure. This gut microbe is very important for the integrity of the epithelial cells of the gut, so that the pathogen doesn't enter into the bloodstream. The gut microbe involve synthesize vitamins and short chain fatty acid is very important, the good microbe. And also it break down all the complex carbohydrate and produce short chain fatty acid, and is very important butyric acid for immune function as well as cognitive functions. And of course, if you have good microbe, if you don't destroy by taking antibiotic, then this gut microbe will not allow the pathogenic microbe to colonize in the gut. And of course, it stimulates the natural killer cell activity and others to short chain fatty acid. So it's very important. But unfortunately, these gut microbes are changing in India because of the children are no more born with a normal way, through cesarean way. During that, they don't get the gut microbes, the great gift from the mother when they're coming out normally to the birth canal. But with the cesarean baby, it is difficult. They do get some through breast milk, but it is not the same as it is. So in Europe, we don't have a much cesarean baby unless it is needed. So it is very important, this gut microbe, and that you can have it through lactobacillus different species we know of now, and a lot of patterns going on in a yogurt, and it can be involved. And as you see that as you get old, or we have a nutritional problem, we call it immunosenescence. That is the impaired chemotaxis of the neutrophils, impaired oxidative burst, and it cannot kill the bacteria. And there are a lot of problems. And also toll-like receptor is very important. I didn't have time to discuss this. Toll-like receptor is the most important, they can sense which is pathogen, which is not pathogen, and that way then they behave, the process the pathogen inside the cell, and then produce the cytokines, kappa B, etc., to kill the pathogen. So toll-like receptor, if it is not expressed properly, then we don't have a proper surveillance of the immune system. So that happens because of age, and also if we don't have a proper nutrition on that. The monocyte, again, it can also immunosenescence happens if the TLR receptor are not expressed and the response is not good enough. Then of course we don't respond as we should do against the invasion of the virus. And natural killer cell is very important. It is if it is not in a properly balanced, then it's a big problem. It can kill our own cells and can produce the autoimmune problems, or if it is in a proper balance, it will kill only the infected cells or cancer cell, not the other cell. So this is very important, that we should not go to immunosenescence. And these are also important. The T lymphocyte is very important in order to produce cytokines, in order to produce the antibody through B cells. The T lymphocyte activity is very important. And B lymphocyte is very important. You have a vaccine, you have a memory B lymphocyte, but their number should be right all the time so that it can produce the antibody whenever we are challenged with this particular pathogen, that is, we got the information through vaccine. So it's important the B lymphocyte number and competence is there, and they produce the antibody. That is also, it needs a lot of energy and a lot of machineries in order to produce the antibody after vaccination or after the B memory cells. It has been shown that the COVID situation after vaccination, even after natural immunity, the B lymphocyte memory B cells are really dying down very quickly, waning. And that means even after vaccination, if the memory B cells are not there, they cannot produce the antibody against the vaccine that we know of or the pathogen. So that is, we don't know yet, but it is shown that it is rapidly, the special natural antibody, natural B cells, the memory antibody, the memory cells are decreasing quite rapidly after 2-3 months. And so is the vaccine induced the memory B cells also maybe not be there. And it is shown that when they produce the pseudovirus of Delta and others, and then try to see whether this antibody can work or not, they found that against the Omicron virus, the antibody we have against that we have through vaccination, all of them, Moderna, Covaxin, or Pfizer, they don't neutralize this Omicron virus. That is a major problem, 100%. So that's why even we take a double vaccine, both from of Pfizer or of Moderna or Covaxin, it is not good enough to neutralize the Omicron virus, because the Omicron virus, they change the spike protein so extensively, it is not well recognized by the antibody. That is the major problem. And but it is shown that if we have a third or booster in vaccine, then it protects to some extent. Severity is protected, so we don't need to end up in a hospitalization. We can sustain these problems. Another thing is a dendritic cell. It's very important sweeper, part of both innate and adaptive system. It is very important between the crosstalk between the innate and adaptive systems. And if it is not in a proper shape, it does not have a toll-like receptor. That is, I said, it is sensing the pathogen. If it is not there, then it will have no use. So that is very important, that we make sure all these cells are in a good shape through proper nutrition, physical activity, etc., so that they can, even after immunization or vaccination, they will be properly function. If they are not properly function after vaccination, it may not work 100% as you expected. Now, the cytokine storm I talked about, that when the cytokine storm is there, that adaptive system is not still yet in, but a lot of cytokines are produced in order to kill the virus. But this cytokines actually damaging our own body system, and that is called cytokine storm, or it's called macrophage super stimulation, and that can lead to clotting problems and voluminous shock or any other shock, lung injury, of course, if the COVID virus, not Omicron, that can induce the lung injury, cell death, immunoparalysis, and renal function, and ultimately death. And the only medicine that has been used so far is to stop this immune response. There's a kind of right by steroid, or that can be used, and that is used, but timing is very important. I'm talking about Delta virus here, so that you can stop the cytokine productions in an extensive way, so that you can protect your the vascularity of the body and of the defense system. So it's very important. But as you see, this dietary fat, omega-3 fatty acid, if it is not there at all or very little, that it cannot decrease or reduce the cytokine productions. Omega-3 fatty acid is known very well that it can reduce all the inflammatory cytokines production. But unfortunately, because of the dietary habit, we have a very little of omega-3 fatty acid. So we are already producing excess of omega-6 mediated cytokine production. That means all of this, and that's why we need, in a fever and others, aspirin, etc., in order to stop the prostaglandin production coming from arachidonic acid. But if we have enough of omega-3 fatty acid, we can modulate interleukin production in more balanced way. That is the ratio that is ideally maintained in Japan and ideally maintained in Norway, because they have a more of seafood, not the sweetwater food, where the omega-3 is available, and so that you don't have a exacerbated the inflammatory situation that we see in cytokine production. So only way to do it is to use the steroid, and steroid has been used different names to stop the production of cytokines by macrophages and other cells, and this is a blanket approach. And the steroid, what it does, it stops the phospholipase A2 so that it doesn't liver one of the mechanism, of course, arachidonic acid, and then prostaglandin, and directly it is inhibiting a lot of cytokines stimulated, as you see in the left side of the situation. And that has been used, but corticosteroid has a lot of side effects, as you know, and it has to be timed and things like that. But it is a situation, very extreme condition. The steroid has been used in order to stop the cytokine storms. But if our body has enough of omega-3 fatty acid, so we have a less of arachidonic acid, we have more arachidonic acid, as I said, because of all the seed oil got linoleic acid, and linoleic acid is a precursor of arachidonic acid, and all these prostaglandins are omega-6 fatty acid coming from omega-6 arachidonic acid are pro-inflammatory, and they increase the immune response, inflammation, etc., etc. But if you replace arachidonic acid to some extent by icosapentaenoic acid, that is the fatty acid you can get from seafood, or you can get from alpha linoleic acid present in mustard oil, little bit, and also spinach and urad dal, and also hillshire fish may have. Those are coming from the sea, and some plant has, and canola oil, that icosapentaenoic acid then compete out arachidonic acid and produce their own prostaglandin, which is not stimulatory. So this is the way you can modulate to some extent the cytokine storms. And unfortunately in India, the omega-3 reserve in the body is pretty low, and we have more arachidonic acid than ever before. And that was the result of to reduce the cholesterol level in the body, to reduce the heart problem, but we have more allergy problem, more kind of a what you call it, bronchus problem, etc., because of arachidonic acid metabolites induce cytokine production and prostaglandin, and less of omega-3 icosapentaenoic acid. As you see in this slide, I'll not go details into that. The diet, if you have a omega-3 rich oil like canola oil or mustard oil, then you have a 18,3 N-3, then it goes to omega-3 fatty acid, icosapentaenoic acid, and docosahexaenoic acid. or you can get straight from fish oil, the seafood, cod liver oil, etc. Then you can dampen down so many things, including the virion production and multiplication of the viruses. So it's very important that we have a good amount of omega-3 fatty acid in order to balance the inflammatory. Inflammation is important. I'm not saying that it's bad, but exacerbated or too much of inflammatory condition that we see in cytokine production is very bad. It is damaging our body. But if you have a proper ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, then we have a better cellular immunity, not a excessive production of cytokines that you see in a cytokine or fever and other conditions. So this omega-6 and omega-3 ratio is very important to maintain, and through different situation, and that is by taking the different seed. We know that walnut has omega-3 fatty acid a little bit more, and then we know spinach, etc. And also some of the seafood, salmon in Norway, and tuna in other countries also here, and also other seafood, fish, I forgot the name at the moment, is available, and you can increase the omega-3 reserve in the body so that the less of immune reaction will happen. Another thing is omega-3 fatty acid, and with the bacteria also, bug is also, they are very important to maintain the gut integrity. You see here in the inflammatory condition or dysbiosis. Dysbiosis means displacing the gut microbiota, helpful microbiota, with the pathogenic or other kind of bacteria. Because of antibiotic situation, environment pollution, they actually making this gut leak, barrier permeability increase, mucus production, pro-inflammatory cytokine, oxidative stress, and tight junction is not there anymore. But this study shown that if you take omega-3 fatty acid and also good microbiome, you can seal this, making a very high integrative gut is very important. Leaky gut is a big problem, and as you know, the gut feeling, the gut is the most important organ in the body. It's producing so many things and involved in the feeling, how we feel mentally, psychologically. The gut is very important, and seems like an inflammation of the gut is, as you see, under different condition because of pollution, because of other kind of bacteria is colonizing these things, and as well as oxidative stress, etc., can destroy this. But this study showed that omega-3 supplementation, along with good microbiome, we call it prebiotic and probiotic, it can increase, including vitamin A, it can increase the gut integrity and maintain the immunity very well. Another important is vitamin D. As you know, the vitamin D is very important, but unfortunately we have a lot of sunlight in India, but vitamin D deficiency is random, and it is from Middle East to India, everywhere. And I don't want to go to the biochemistry of it. You all know it, that the important is 25 hydroxy vitamin D that has to go to the kidney in order to get another hydroxylation and that make a active vitamin D. And this active vitamin D is very important in order to maintain the immunomodulatory effect. As you see here, as I mentioned, interleukin 8, 6, 2, these are very highly inflammatory. It's reduced by vitamin D. If the vitamin D deficiency is there, then there will be highly inflammatory conditions. And it decreases the mucus secretion, and also it is involved in neutrophil too much situation and T17 differentiation. And also it is also involved in tight gap junction, and it is very important. The respiratory epithelium is very well affected. Actually, not a lot of studies done that low level of vitamin D3 is found in most of the COVID patients, or vice versa. So the supplementation of vitamin D3 is highly recommended in a COVID patient because it seems like it's directly related to the COVID severity with vitamin D. And vitamin D is involved in immune functions, several immune functions, and one is the macrophage differentiation is very important. And dendritic cell is the most important cell that is crosstalk between innate immunity and adaptive immunity and antigen presenting cells. It takes up the virus and pick up the pathogenic protein fragment and represent to MHC2 and then give it to T cells, and T cell becomes stimulated and then give information to B cells so that we can produce the antibody against that virus that it has eaten. So it's very important, dendritic cells maturation. And vitamin D directly, if it is not doing too much, is a big problem in the deficit condition. So as you see here, these are involved in several T helper cell, both in innate system and also adaptive immune response. Another thing is oxidative stress, as we know, is a very important issue, any viral infection, because of oxidative leakage is happening, and we have an imbalance happen. And so and if the oxidative stress is there, then of course the tissue injury, inflammation, apoptosis will be there. So it is important that we should have enough of antioxidant that is present in most of the fruits and vegetables. It is important to take as a whole so that we get the enough of vitamin C, E, and A from the and zinc also in some fruits vegetable has it, so that we have a proper antioxidant balance in the body. And it's very important during the infection, before and after, we should have enough of antioxidant. Another is zinc is also important. It is a gatekeeper of immune function, and it is shown that the zinc deficiency is involved with overproduction of inflammatory cytokines and Th1, Th2 disbalance. Th1 is producing cytokines, is a cell-mediated immunity, or Th2 is involved in antibody-mediated immunity. And if it is there, that means the person will produce more cytokines and less antibody. That is present. That is happening in old people, where they are more of Th1 bias than Th2. So even they are taking a shot against pneumonia and other, they die because they don't produce much antibody because of Th2 cells are not enough. So it's very important. You may be vaccinated, but you have to have a proper nutrients in the body so that the whole system work in a proper way. And zinc homeostasis is very important. As I mentioned, it balances between tolerance and defense mechanism. And some of the, of course, if you take too much of it, everything has some side effect. It is there. So we have to maintain the proper zinc concentration in the body. And some of the enzyme, antioxidant enzymes, and also some of the other enzymes, zinc is a part of the cofactor. I already mentioned about the gut bacteria and dysbiosis. Dysbiosis can happen in a environmental, bad environment conditions, antibiotic torture, or even drug, medicine. If you take too much of medicine, that impact the bacteria, the gut bacteria, and that can be then populated by pathogenic bacteria or non-pathogenic, whatever it is. But we will lose the bacterium or gut microbiome, which is helpful to us. It is metabolizing the resistant carbohydrate and producing short chain fatty acid. Some of the other gases is very important for our body, immune systems, and the brain function and cognitive function, including blood pressure, etc. is very important. So we have to have a proper gut bacterium in the system. As we know that some of the polysaccharides, polyphenols, these are very important in order to maintain this gut bacteria. And if you have this polysaccharide, this bacteria producing short chain fatty acid, mostly acetic acid, butyric acid, and propionate, and they are actually impacting different cell system and modulate the interleukin production. So you see the polysaccharide, the part we generally don't take it, in a refined food, but these are they're very important, our most important partner, and the gut bacteria, which is present in the gut and producing short chain fatty acid, and they regulate the immune system. So one has to be very careful during this infection or throughout the life cycle that we should have at least 20 to 40 grams of polysaccharide, the complex carbohydrate, the food we need for our co-host, that is microbiota, and it is good for our health. And if it is not there, they will not survive, and then the problem with the leaky gut, etc., immune imbalance, inflammation of the gut, and the gut-related disease can happen. So it's very important that we should have a complex carbohydrate and sometimes polyphenol also. And there are several micronutrients, as you know. The vitamin A is a lot of studies done with measles virus, HIV, avian coronavirus, B vitamin. Vitamin C is very important for immune function. Vitamin D, I already talked about. Vitamin E, selenium is very important for influenza virus, avian coronavirus, and poliovirus. Zinc, iron, and of course, carotenoid, polyphenol, omega-3, and probiotic, the gut bacteria. I already talked about it. And these are the sources, but in India, you can find out what are the best sources for this nutrient that we need for our complete immune system. And as you see, zinc is present only in shellfish and meat and cheese. Those who are vegetarian, they have to think about the whole grain, which contain a lot of zinc and selenium, and also the iron, copper. These are all important. So it's a full nutrition. It's very important for the whole body, but some of the nutrient is very important for immune function. And if your immune system is highly engaged in fighting against the viruses, so you make sure you get a good supplementation all the time. So at the moment, the Omicron will find everybody of us, because whether we are vaccinated with so-called, so far the vaccines we have, the Moderna or Pfizer or Covaxin, or whatever it is, or non-vaccine, we will be infected with a different degree of efficiency and transmissibility. So Omicron will be there, and Omicron will find us, that is for sure. And we will have a very little kind of symptoms, maybe runny nose, a little bit fever, body ache, etc. And those who are not vaccinated, they might get a severe aspect of this. May not be the lung, because it doesn't go to the lung, but other kind of symptom may appear, and hospitalization could be needed. So the double vaccination, whoever has it, are protected to some extent against the Omicron. And it is important that those who are vaccinated, even they are hospitalized, they will do much better and they will survive. But those who are not vaccinated, they are really, really vulnerable at the moment against Omicron. So in my opinion, there are three options I can see in future, that COVID may become seasonal flu with one dominant strain. It could be Omicron or other things, and then we'll have it will come and go, and we'll have a kind of a sneezing and very little kind of symptoms. Or it could be a kind of a dengue fever with a severe situation, with several variants circulating in the globe. As I mentioned, that more host it gets, more kind of a mutation it will produce and variant. And some people it can make ill and there. And so we have to make sure that they get the proper vaccine. Of course, Omicron vaccine is in the card, it will come. Or that is the best possibility, best scenario, and I hope for that, but it will not happen. Then Omicron becomes a king of variants and produces herd immunity. And because if we are all infected with the Omicron, and we produce the antibody against the Omicron, so there's a herd immunity will be there without paying too much cost, because it will not need hospitalization as far as we know, and it doesn't lead to any death or severity, because we got all, or most of them are double vaccinated. And if it does that, then it is really good. That means there will be no chance of further mutation possible, and world will be almost free of COVID, but it is very highly unlikely. But this is another concept is coming, that Omicron, getting Omicron is taking a live attenuated virus vaccine. Those are not having a very big reaction or severe situation, and they are probably having antibody against Omicron, but not showing much symptoms. That means it's like a live attenuated virus vaccine. But time will tell whether it is true or not. But if it is happening, that the third option will be the reality. So with this, I would like to finish my talk. Thank you very much for listening me. And if there is any question, I'll be very happy to answer. And thank you for your time, and with all the best wishes. And I hope we'll overcome the Omicron problem very soon.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable lecture. It was truly informative. But before thanking sir, I would take the privilege to introduce Professor Ashim Kumar Datta Roy, our keynote speaker. Sir is one of the most well-known faces around, and for those of you who do not know him, I'm sure there is no one, but if there is, a formal introduction is necessary. Professor Ashim Kumar Datta Roy, Faculty of Medicine, University of Oslo, Norway, is a professor in University of Oslo from 2001 and is a group leader in chronic diseases. He was the principal scientist in Aberdeen University, UK, a senior health scientist in Ohio, USA, and also associated earlier with the Wright State University School of Medicine and also in Ohio. To just name few of the institutions who are lucky enough to have him as a faculty, he is the editor-in-chief of the journal Food and Nutrition Research and a fellow of International College of Medicine. He received the Elizabeth Kushner Memorial Award and many more in his brilliant academic career. He has also several international patents. Fruit flow, these are special mentioned among all of them. A person having experience of delivering lecture on various topics on nutrition and other medical topic as well. We are extremely fortunate to have him with us, and once again want to thank sir for giving us your valuable time. We are really very much blessed to have you, sir. We are seeing that so many questions are there at the chat box, and we will definitely try to answer all the queries in our interactive session. So for this, I am requesting Srimati Gopa Chatterjee Madam, our faculty, Department of Food and Nutrition, for the interactive session. Over to Gopa.
Thank you, Shomadhi. Good evening, everyone. So here the first question is, how effective are Covishield and Covaxin against Omicron? In particular, the booster dose.
Yeah, that's a good question because unlike the mRNA vaccine, this Covishield is a different type than Covaxin. So it is possible it might be more effective, but we don't have a data yet on that. We have only data from Pfizer and Moderna. They showed that it does not neutralize more than 40-50% of this Omicron virus. But these are mRNA virus, and it is against the spike protein only, and the spike protein change extensively by that. But whereas the whole dead virus is used as an antigen, so we really don't know about it. But I'm sure the booster dose will be effective. Almost sure, but nobody can be sure under this situation. Since it is a different technology used, we need to some laboratory data to make sure. But the hunch feeling is that the booster dose will work probably much more than Pfizer and Moderna that we know of is working. At least it's giving a muted symptoms. It's not. It stopped the hospitalization. Even a lot of people getting infection and reinfection, but they're okay. They're with a high fever sometimes, but with 4 or 5 days they are getting better off. And as I said, that even Omicron is infected, first 7 days there is no medicine for you, so it is no point to go to the hospital. Try to take either ibuprofen or aspirin or any other like the NSAID, and then it should be okay. But I come to the question again, to the wording. I think this we don't know the data, but I think it will work. Like any other vaccines, and maybe much more because its technology is different. So it might bind the spike protein other situation, even it is mutated.
Okay, so the next question is booster dose final, or we have to take it every 2 or 5 years?
Yeah, that is a question that we don't know the answer yet. But the important thing is all depends on the memory B cells, that how long this particular memory B cell that contain the information are maintaining their concentration level throughout without the booster dose. That we don't know. But every 6 months or 8 months, there will be some study to see whether they have enough antibody in the system or the memory B cell is there. So if it is there, then we don't need it. But if it is not there, and the virus, because world is heterogeneous, a lot of people are not vaccinated, and a lot of people are vaccinated. So there will be probably more mutation will come and variant, and so we don't know. So there is a two scenario here. One is if the mutation still goes on, then this may not be that effective. And if mutation doesn't go, but whether the memory B cell will survive lifelong, that we don't know. But influenza virus, every year we get a jab, so that because the memory B cell is not surviving more than a year. So we don't know, but it's a good question to think about. Yeah.
So the next question is, sir, I learned from someone whose mom was seriously ill due to COVID few months ago. Doctors even announced slim chance of her survival, but miracle is that her sugar level that was high now came down to normal. Similar stories came up about 4 more people. What is the mystery?
Yeah, I think there is some, the information is not very full, because just only sugar level was high. It is not a big problem. One can easily handle sugar level by giving several hypoglycemic drug. I need to know more further, more information regarding the other situation, the heart, lungs, and the blood electrolytes, etc., in order to make a comment. And in science, a miracle does not happen. There must be some reason behind it, and the treatment, we need to see what was done, so that then I can make any comment. But you can send me the full information to my email, then I will definitely comment to that and respond.
Is intake of ivermectin weekly really helpful in reducing the chance of occurrence of COVID-19 even after double dose vaccination? The vaccination is completed.
Not at all. Why ivermectin? It should not be given at all, even during infection. Because if virus is in the body, then probably it can work. So if no virus is there, why I should take it? There's a lot of side effects, etc. So I will not go for it, and it is very wrong. Only it happen. One can try, but it is not. It is not a good drug anyhow, and it is not meant for COVID virus. So the most important is to produce immunity, natural immunity in our body, either by vaccination or through proper nutrition, etc. But don't take any COVID drug if you are not infected or have it. No, at all. It has a lot of side effects.
Next question is, if anyone's vitamin D level is high, then chances of COVID affection is less.
Yeah, it could be less, but we have a few studies done showing the correlation of vitamin D level in the plasma with the incidence of COVID. It is shown that there is less of COVID incidence with the vitamin D level. And then the question is what is high? Because there are some controversy about it. Some people use 10 to 20 microgram, something like that, and some use more than 200. But definitely, we make sure that the vitamin D level is there in the appropriate level, so that our immune system is more active and more proactive than in absence of vitamin D. And as far as I know, billions of people are vitamin D deficit. And there is a study will soon be commissioned in UK about the vitamin D level, vitamin D supplementation and COVID incidence. And then we can say definitely that it is there. But whatever data we have so far from the patient and in vitro study, and the vitamin D level is if there is enough, then we are a bit protected against COVID infection.
Next question is zinc supplement or vitamin C supplement helpful?
Yes, it is helpful. Vitamin C you can take up to certain extent because it's water-soluble vitamin, so it has no so-called toxic effect. And zinc supplement definitely should help. But before that, you can see your blood level, zinc level, how it is, and all this. Then you decide how much and what you should take. So it's important to see whether the total electrolyte and other thing in the plasma, then obviously. But vitamin C you can always take anyhow. It is not a problem, especially in the cold winter time when the infection, cold virus is abundant and they can infect us. And vitamin C is shown is there. But I'm sure that zinc sufficiency is not enough in India. It may be deficit, but it's better to check this.
Next question is, does Omicron help developing antibody? If yes, does this antibody works against other variants of COVID?
Again, it is antibody is a kind of recognition system. The virus, different variants, like the shirt I'm wearing, and if the shirt is similar, that several people wearing that can be recognizable. So it depends on the mutation of the virus. If it is too much of mutation, as it happens against the antibody is produced, that happens against S protein in Omicron, so the antibody doesn't recognize significantly, so we have infection. So it depends on the degree of mutation and where it is the mutated. If it is mutated on the S protein, then of course the antibody is important. But it is mutated in other proteins which involve in virulence, multiplication, etc., then is another problem. So it seems like the Omicron has a 30 mutation on the spike protein. That protein the virus uses to enter into the recognition system on the receptor of our tissue. And if it is mutated too much, but it helps to into the system, but the antibody doesn't recognize it as they should, then obviously it's a big problem. And the future virus, if it is mutated in that way and much more, then we have a big problem. But then that's why the Covaxin and others who are antibody, the vaccine is produced the whole virus, then the possibility is high they will recognize more than just mRNA, which is the content only the spike protein against the antibody is produced. So it's very limited in that sense, but more effective, of course. But that depends on the degree of mutation and what the mutation is there. And whether mutation, as I said, is a random process. That mutation can also kill the virus itself, or it can be much more aggressive and much more transmissive and much more virulence. Then is a big problem, of course. But antibody against the parent virus and others, they will affect 10, 20, 30, depends on the degree of mutation.
Next question is, does any antibiotic work against Omicron?
Antibiotic is an antibacterial, not antivirus. No, it is meaningless. It is only given because a viral infection can lead to secondary bacterial infection, but it is not needed. And people should check CRP level to give the antibiotic. So no antibiotic should be given if the CRP level is below 10, 20. And the random use of wanton use of antibiotic is dangerous, and nobody should talk about it. No.
Okay, sir. Next question is, should we take high protein diet after Omicron?
I should go for balanced protein diet rather than the high protein diet, because high protein diet and high fat diet, the keto diet, these are you can use it for different purposes. But when somebody is infected with COVID, I will go for more balanced diet. That the ratio of carbohydrate, fat, and protein, along with vitamins and minerals and non-nutrients, the complete food is more important, and a lot of water that would help us to regenerate our system, immune system.
Okay. Next question is, how long does Omicron virus remain alive in the body of an affected person?
Okay, as I said, the virus only interest is to multiply. So when it enters into the body cell, then it gives them genomic information, whether it's a RNA or DNA. What is DNA virus or RNA? In this case, is a single-strand RNA. So RNA goes there, and they're making several millions or thousands of viral particle variants, then go to the system. Then, depending on the antibody, etc., and so this different level of so produce the and virus to grow and proliferate, because it doesn't allow the wild type, only the mutant is surviving because of the vaccine is resistant to that one because of mutation. It is a kind of a selective pressure, of course. Yeah. All right.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
No more
Thank you very
questions
much,
there.
and I'm very happy to be sharing with you. And if you have any questions, my email are there in my website, so you can send me. And the important thing is the personal medical thing I cannot discuss publicly, so you can send me through email. Okay. And with this, thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your valuable, informative session. Now, I would like to invite our principal ma'am for concluding speech.
Yes, the session was really informative, and it was wonderful to listen to you, sir. And it's indeed a very tough job to thank you, rather, because we have come to know about so many things regarding the diet and medicine, and actually the Omicron itself. So I really convey my gratitude to you, sir, and hope that you'll be with us in future also. সুদীপ্তা mic off করো. I'm so sorry, sir, for this interruption.
Oh, that's
and I really convey my thanks and gratitude from the core of my heart and from all the staff and students of my college. And it was indeed wonderful listening you, and we will meet again, perhaps in a COVID-free world, to listen to something else. And I don't know, perhaps you can better say that whether we'll be able to go for a COVID-free world in near future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and best wishes, and thank you, everyone. So me too. I will try to meet you next time, somewhere, maybe next year or end of this year. Thank you so much. Okay, when I visit India. Okay, thank you.
We are privileged to have Dr. Ashim Kumar Roy in between us today. In this current pandemic situation, the guidelines provided by him is like medicine to us. On behalf of entire HMMCW family, I want to thank you, sir, from the bottom of my heart to be with us today. I want to thank our principal madam, Dr. Shoma Ghosh, a true inspiration to all the teachers for our constant support and encouragement even in this pandemic situation. I would also like to thank IQSC coordinator Dr. Rupa Sen, Bursar Madam Dr. Lipika Mollik, our Teacher Council Secretary Dr. Pradip Dash, and Webinar Subcommittee Convener Dr. Pradipta Mukherjee for their continuous support. I would like to take a moment to thank our technical coordinator, Srimati Pooja Dash, Faculty of Department of Computer Science, and Srimati Atri Bhattacharya, Faculty of Department of History, who I feel simply haven't been thanked enough for their tireless support. Let me also thank our HOD Madam, Srimati Shoma Shaha, and all the faculties of Department of Food and Nutrition, Srimati Bhashuti Ghosh, Srimati Moshali Sinha, Srimati Gopal Chatterjee, for their support and cooperation. Last but not the least, I want to thank my audience, without whom it is not possible to make this webinar a huge success. Please note there is a feedback link in the description box. Kindly fill it until it is active. because once we are done with the webinar, it will get deactivated. So thank you and good night to all.
Thank you.